Like what?
So does first summary need to extend defense?
No, but it does need to be in final focus.
Okay. Second speaking ability to go back, please.
I don't require you to.
That applies to everyone.
No, actually. Do you have another G2? Do you have another G2? Like, this one's, like, weird, and then this one's, like, only good one thing. Shit, okay. It's fine. I think I have another one.
You all think that have like size
Yeah.
Is anyone not ready? And is this volume okay? Jason and I affirm NCAA student athletes ought to be recognized as employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Our sole contention is eradicating exploitation. SAB writes in 2011, indentured servitude was a form of labor. Poor individuals will provide services demanded by their masters in exchange for lodging. The system persists. Instead of calling their workers indentured servants, the NCAA calls them student athletes. The indentured athlete does not receive any paycheck. McCormick from the University of Michigan furthers in 2010 that NCAA rules effectively sanction the exploitation of student athletes. NCAA rules obligate players to live by a code of amateurism that forecloses any real opportunity to earn compensation for their labor. Thankfully, recognizing NCAA student athletes as employees and not just amateur players ends exploitation in three key ways. And first is by paying players. Currently, Ellen of the National College Players Association reports that not only does NCAA mandated scholarship shortfalls leave players with thousands of dollars of debt, because of a lack of compensation, it leaves most in poverty. Their study concluded that the average scholarship left 86% of student athletes below the federal poverty line. Furthermore, NCAA amateurism rules disallow athletes from profiting off their fame because they're only recognized as students. Fortunately, the U.S. Department of Labor explains the Fair Labor Standards Act requires employers to pay their employees the minimum wage, and recognizing them as employees will allow them to profit off things like autographs and endorsements like professional players. This is important as Roderick of Harvard quantifies that every 1% increase in income reduces poverty by 1.7%. Ultimately, AOL Finance concludes that if reforms were to take place, graduation rates would increase dramatically and financial desperation would be reduced. Second is workers' compensation. Walter Byers, the first executive director of the NCAA, is quoted comparing today's collegiate sports system to plantation life. After all, athletes work sometimes to the point of injury or death for the profit and entertainment of others. McCormick furthers in 2006, the NCAA purposely created the term student athlete to obscure the reality of the university-athlete employment relationship to avoid legal responsibilities. One of these legal responsibilities is compensating their injured players. Fine Law writes that in most situations, injured employees receive workers' compensation insurance. This covers medical care for their injuries, replacement income, and compensation for any permanent injuries. But as the New York Times puts it, college athletes aren't employees, so there's no workers' compensation. This is unfortunate as the Center for Disease Control reports in 2015 that student athletes experience roughly 200,000 injuries every single year. Third is enabling unionization. Goff 2013 explains that in the current collegiate athletic system, players have virtually no rights. Athletic scholarships are up for the renewal at the discretion of coaches every single year, meaning that students' places are not secure. This gives coaches an exorbitant amount of power to wield over young athletes. Fortunately, recognizing students as employees would allow them to unionize, as the National Labor Relations Board writes that employees have the right to attempt to form a union where none currently exists. There is precedence for success. Croucher of the New Yorker finds that the National Labor Relations Board found that because scholarship players on Northwestern University's football team were employees of the school, they had the right to form a union. The ability to unionize is highly beneficial. As Edelman of the Wall Street Journal explains, unions enable workers to present a uniform front to management, articulate workplace concerns, and engage in collective actions such as strikes when important employee needs are not met. A union would help students find new financial rights and secure improvements to healthcare benefits. In fact, Michael Leroy of the University of Illinois finds that the mere threat of college players unionizing would produce reform within the athletic system. Ultimately, the Economic Policy Institute quantifies that unions raise the compensation, including both wages and benefits of their workers, by 28%. Because the exploitation of future generations is always wrong, Jason and I are proud to affirm.
Will the judges in this round please raise their hand? Okay. What? Right. What is your name? Okay. Thanks.
Okay, is anyone not ready? Okay, time starts now. New date. Our first intention is preventing kids from going to college. Brian Burton and 2015 explains that even though many colleges are rapidly increasing athletic spending, only 24 colleges have actually made a profit. Even worse, Burton finds that as spending outpaces revenue, colleges are forced to make a trade-off and take more institutional funds. This diversion of funds will only increase in a world where we pay student athletes. This happens in two ways. First is tuitions. Dorfman from Forbes in 2013 explained that by paying student athletes, you will force colleges to increase student tuitions. This increase has already happened before. Greenwald, the Huffington Post in 2013 finds that states that have high athletic spending have seen a 65% increase in college tuitions. Problematically, David Hellman of Cornell University finds that a $100 increase in tuitions leads to a 0.25% decrease in enrollment. By affirming, you prevent tens of thousands of people from attending college. But second is getting rid of lower-level programs. As established, the majority of colleges are not money makers. This is extremely problematic, as Larry Scott of USA Today in 2017 finds that with the introduction of wages, many lower-level, non-profitable sports programs would go extinct. This reaction to an increase in spending has already happened before, as Katie Thomas in 2011 finds that after the implementation of Title IX, many colleges cut off men's programs instead of expanding women's programs. Overall, cutting programs stops students from going to college. Empirically, Miller of CPM writes that the death of sports programs could cut the enrollment rate in colleges by up to 50%. The impact of keeping kids in college and graduation is extremely significant, as Philip of the University of Maine explains that the probability of being employed as a graduate is 24% higher, with 134% higher annual earnings and a poverty rate 3.5 times lower. By raising student tuitions and removing lower-level programs, you remove such opportunity from the vast majority of student athletes and the general student body. Intention 2 is maintaining the cycle of reform. Every time society calls for reform, the NCAA answers. For example, Paul, the New York Times reports that when the NCAA athletes threatened to unionize in 2015, the organization started providing guaranteed four-year scholarships, bigger scholarship stipends, and postgraduate health care. This is because whenever the media attacks the NCAA, they attempt to insulate themselves by giving student athletes more benefits. We see this today as O'Donnell of the SB Nation writes in 2017 that due to status quo distrust in the NCAA perpetrated by media outlets, the president organization is promising more reform. These new reforms can be seen in two areas. First is scholarships. Doug of IHE writes that a crucial part of NCAA reform is scholarships. More specifically, he finds that they're now expanding scholarships to include the full cost of tuition, multi-year scholarships, and spreading them more evenly so the playing field is more equal, all contributing to providing more opportunities for students to attend college. Ross of the New Republic finds the majority of low-income students attend college through scholarships as they can't afford to go on their own. This is crucial, as the Seattle Times finds that with a scholarship, you have a 90% chance of getting a job, thus breaking the cycle of poverty. Second is the quality of education. The Denver Post in 2017 writes that another big part of NCAA reform is improving the quality of education. Specifically, they find students are now getting more time to study or to find internships. More so, the Denver Post concludes by finding that scholarships now will remain with the student even if they get injured, shifting the focus away from sports and towards academics. This means more people graduating, as Stanford University finds a correlation between the quality of education and the graduation rate. However, recognizing students under the Fair Labor Standards Act ends all reform in two ways. First, by creating a false sense of legitimacy. Ross of the New Republic finds that paying student athletes gives people a sense of legitimacy that the NCAA is taking action and thus gives everyone a false sense of security. This allows the NCAA to go back to their old roots and stop new reform from happening. But second is by creating a trade-off. Harrison Marcus of the LW writes that if we were to pay college athletes, we would see a direct trade-off with status quo benefits, such as free academic support, superior health care, and elite facilities, among others. Ultimately, Ross concludes that paying student athletes would do nothing to end the exploitation of student athletes due to the inherently profit-based system the NCAA has created. Rather, Ross writes that the only way to end student exploitation and create a truly educational system for student athletes is a structural reform of the NCAA, which can only happen when he negates.
We're just going to do a few seconds of time. So, 5 minutes, institution.
Alright, time starts. All the judges ready. So you say reforms means like third party. What exactly does a reform mean?
Well, what we tell you specifically with the Denver Post finds is that now what they're doing is they're getting more internship, they get more time to study in the first place. And second of all, that scholarships aren't going away when you get injured.
Okay, so Can you quantify the impact of reform?
Well, we would argue is that since your like the affirmative impact is increasing the quality of first, the Stanford analysis at the bottom tells you specifically that the quality of education is related to the graduation rates in the first place. So we would argue that by increasing the quality of education,
Yeah, I didn't ask what the link is.
Like,
Like
what do you want me to
quantify like how much? Like what are
Like, I
reforms
can't-
doing right now?
I can't quantify education. Like, what do you want me to say? Like we're saying that education is getting better
Okay, you
and
said,
that reforms are
okay,
going to
so
get
you
better.
said that grad rates is like the impact of quality of education.
Well, that's
So
one.
because of reforms, how much are grad rates increasing?
Well, Stanford finds that because like specifically like quality of education like leads to like a higher graduation rate. Like we don't have any specific evidence that reform has like led to this. All right, can I say a question?
Yeah.
On workers' compensation, you say athletes suffer 201,000 like injuries, right? So how severe are most of these injuries? Like what? Like am I twisting my tongue? Like what? What?
Like they range.
So like what percentage? What
injuries and,
like how? Yeah. So like what percent of injuries actually require like a lot more money?
these are like pretty dangerous sports.
Like yeah. Okay. So how much? Like we would argue that injuries are pretty rare. Like you don't see like the majority of like these teams like being all injured. Like I want to find specifically that how much like how many of these
but you
injuries
still
need increased
protect
training.
them, right?
But like I'm like at the expense of like what we think. Like I want to get to the point like how many people are being injured like that are really being like really needed like money by paying student athletes.
Like I don't there was like the exact percentage of that. But all we're telling you is that we protect them in all instances and all ranges. So when those like big events happen and they have game ending careers, we can compensate.
Yeah. So like
We
how
don't
often
just
is that? Like I would argue that most of these injuries are like spraining your leg. Like that
Well,
doesn't
like-
take like a huge like amount of money to like solve that.
Exactly, but like the NCAA and like colleges don't want to solve back for that, and the only way to make sure that they pay those small expenses is if you recognize them as
Small
Wait,
expenses?
But could I have a question? Like I mean, if you said there's small. Okay, so you said that like there increases in tuition. Why specifically do you pull from tuition?
Well, we
Like
would,
why can't they not pull from like coaches' salaries or like facility spend?
well, we would argue specifically that since most colleges are making a debt. Okay, first of all, we would argue that these colleges want the infrastructure there in the first place. But second of all, the Greenwell
Why do
evidence
they
tells
want
you
the
specifically because like that's for they use it for recruitment and like it's better for them in the long term.
So
Like-
what is more recruiting? Like I have a nice pro facility, or I will
No,
pay you cash to
no.
pay for me.
We would argue that if you want to increase that spending, that infrastructure spending is already there. So when you increase like spending, since most colleges right now are not making a profit in the first place, if you increase that extra spending, you be siphoning funds away from tuitions. Like empirically this has happened. The Greenwell evidence tells you specifically that in states where the increase athletic spending using a 55 to
So,
65
but the increase in athletic spending is always for like recruitment, right? So if they
No.
can recruit in different ways,
No,
they just divert
no.
and reallocate.
the reallocation is for paying student athletes.
So we'll take
There's 46 seconds left. So it's going to be straight down the neck case and then back to the ass case for a little bit of free situation. Is everybody ready?
Starting off
in that case, look at the first contingent where we talk about preventing education. They say that only 24 colleges have a profit. The problem with this is that I realize the only reason why schools seem like they're losing money is because they're non-profit. That's where Instruction 15 tells you that because these schools are non-profit, their incentive is to spend every cent that comes in. That doesn't mean that they're not making any money. That just means that they spend all of it as soon as it comes in. Currently, what this looks like is excessive spending on facilities and extra coaches' salaries. Instruction continues that to pay the players would simply require a reallocation of sources from these coaches' salaries and excessive spending on facilities. You're not going to have to cut from tuition and these non-revenue generating sports. But let's get into the specific ones. The first one is cutting tuition. There are a lot of problems here. The first one is realize that the NEG literally cannot figure out where this money can come from. They wouldn't pull up tuition. We would contend that they would pull fees from coaches. That's because Instruction 15 continues that it will be the highly paid coaches and athletic directors who would take the hardest hit if players are paid, not tuition. They literally don't have any link here at all. The second problem is that this doesn't make any logical sense. There's a huge logical fallacy. If colleges hike up tuition rates, they will lose enrollment in the long run, which would only hurt them. If they really want money from tuition, they're not going to hike up these rates because no students are going to apply for these colleges in the first place. The third problem is that this is completely not unique. They conceded this in their case. Higher Insider tells you that tuition is already going up by 3.2% in the status quo. Make them prove the broad line to which you access their impact, and so far as this impact should have already been happening in the status quo. Then let's move on to the second one where they talk about cutting out non-revenue generating sports. Two issues here. First is that realize that paying players is not going to require a significant amount of money because Slate from 2014 tells you that every major university has an annual budget and the hundreds of billions. Athletic spending is only a tiny fraction of that budget. Make them prove that if you affirm, you're going to reach the broad line to which you access your impact. The second one is that Business Insider finds that it only costs about $200 million across the board to pay students. That's really problematic for them because the NCAA got over $1 billion just from March Madness alone, which is just one event. There's plenty of money to go around for these students. Let's move on to the second contention. You can group this entire contention together. It's just talking about current reforms. There are so many issues here. Let's start with the first one. They concede that these reforms exist in the status quo. That means that the impact should have already happened. The fact that they can't quantify the impact right now has two implications. First, even if you buy the warrant, you can't vote neg because you literally have no way to weigh the impact. But second, these reforms aren't working in the status quo. That's why when Art asked him how many people are being benefited by these reforms, he literally has no answer in Crossfire. The second problem is that they never give a clear link as to why the NCAA will repeal these reforms. We will argue that if these reforms are so good, affirming is not going to take away these reforms. Third, their internal link is that people trusting the NCAA leads to complacency and a false sense of security. This is all analytical. They don't even give any quantification of this. We would argue that the NCAA only reforms because they don't want a bad image. These reforms are going to be very good anyway, which means that the people still wouldn't trust the NCAA even if you do affirm. And fourth, you still vote out of strength of link because even if reforms do go away, affirming guarantees benefits of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Littlefield in 2017 finds that one way for their college and university presidents to achieve real change will be to acknowledge that the schools are operating as minor leagues for pro football and pro basketball and treat the players accordingly. That is, pay them for their labor. The fifth response is that you can't enforce NCAA reforms. It's just an option for colleges right now in the status quo to force these onto students. When you affirm, the Fair Labor Standards Act legally binds enforcement, so we're still the team that controls the internal link to this argument of reform anyway. This says it's going to be a huge case turn. Unions can access all of these benefits from our case because unions can access structural reforms because now you're giving these students a power to negotiate against the larger force. Now let's move on to this preemptive weighing. Oklahoma State University tells you that 32% of students neglect education because of debt. The affirmative world is the only world that gives students money to pay off this debt because the affirmative world is the only world paying students. This will be the cleanest link into poverty and long-term benefits for these student athletes, which is ultimately the terminal impact of both teams. So at the end of the day, you're going to be affirming the resolution.
So the order is going to be down their case and then front line. Right. Or any derivative not ready. On their first conception, two things to keep in mind overall in the whole conception. First, Delaney of Chicago Tribune tells you in 2017 that athletes play in sports not to make a living, as they know they probably won't make it to the pros, but rather for the experience and the fun. This is really crucial, as exploitation only means you're taking advantage of an employee, but players do not have to play. But second, Delaney also continues that by engaging in college sports, you help athletes succeed in life by teaching them invaluable lessons through sports and providing a clear path to college degrees. That's exactly why Delaney quantifies that college athletes graduate at a higher rate than college students who do not play sports. In fact, they are much more likely to get jobs and live healthier and fulfilling lives because they're launched into our workplace with lots of experience and skills. That's going to outweigh in the long run. Then, On their case, the first part is about compensation. There are two problems. First, you can cross-apply our first contention for another term. What we tell you is that when you vote pro, you increase the cost of academic departments. Unfortunately, when this happens, Dorfman tells you that colleges divert money from student tuitions. That's logical. Unfortunately, when you increase tuition, you get more people to not come to the colleges because you can't afford it. This is A, big turn, but B, it's going to outweigh their entire case because we're impacting out to every single student, not just student athletes. But second, even if paying student athletes alleviates poverty while in college, the trade-off in education is always going to outweigh in the long run. As Reuters tells you, that student wages will completely change the NCAA system, losing the NCAA's focus on student athlete. Furthermore, Reuters finds that giving college athletes money would change their focus, making them care less about their education, even though less than 2% can go professional. We're always going to outweigh in the long run because a better educational quality in our world is always going to be better than the short-term impacts in their world. But then, their second part is about workmen's compensation. There are two giant problems. First, it's entirely non-unique, as college sports already provide health insurance. As Bleacher Report explains in 2013, that the NCAA already requires all athletes to have medical insurance before they're even allowed to participate in the sports in the first place. But second, we would contend that reform is happening right now. In fact, specifically in California, colleges are required to give health insurance. But third, we would contend that all this great reform in health insurance is happening right now because of the reforms that happens in our network. But B, that means you can turn their entire contention because in our world, the reform gets better and better. That only increases when you vote neg. But then, the third link is about unionization. First, you can clear D-Lincoln as only 29% of students support unionization. That is not enough to form a union in the first place. The way a union works is that everyone agrees to join a union, and that has collective power. But if only 29% are willing to join, then you're not having a union in the first place. But then, you can turn the argument in four ways. First, Livingston in 2014 tells you that collective bargaining would have the ability to negotiate over academic standards ranging from minimum GPA and even graduation requirements. That's crucial, as you can extend and cross-apply Stanford. That tells you there's a direct relationship between quality of education and graduation rates. But second, collective bargaining would get rid of lower-level programs. As Harker of the New York Times in 2014 writes, that collective bargaining would be a disaster for student athletes themselves. Turning student athletes into employees would endanger the existence of varsity sports, and as a result, many low-revenue generating sports would disappear. A world with sports programs with maybe some disadvantage is always going to be preferable to their world where you don't have these lower-level programs at all. But third, you can turn it again, as when they talk about exploitations, unions would create a new form of exploitation. As Hogan from the Enterprise Institute notes, that United Steelworker Unions has been trying to unionize these students for a decade to access some of the millions of dollars associated with college sports. That's crucial, as USA Today tells you that unions would only further corruption in the status quo. So not only are unions A, not going to give a crap about kids right now, but B, you're inputting corruption into an already corrupt system, even making the problem worse. But then, fourth, we would contend that unions are shifting the narrative to the NCAA. This is because the public perceives it as if these students are now better off. Now NCAA can get away with these bad things. They themselves tell you that the threat of unions encourage reform. That goes away when you affirm. Now going to our case, on our first contention, they say that you're going to pull from non-profits. This argument makes no sense. You can look to Greenwald and tell you specifically that they have seen a 65% increase in tuition. You're going to prefer this evidence because it's already happened. They give you a hypothetical saying you can pull from nonprofits, but Greenwald tells you in the past, when they have had to raise more athletic spending, they always pull from nonprofits. It's a historical analysis. You should vote on that.
So there's 20 seconds left.
Ready? Yeah, time starts. Do you mind if I get the first one?
Are these student athletes or are these students?
Students it counts like both.
Wait, I would argue, if it's students in general, obviously they're not going to care about student athlete unions because they're not a student athlete.
Wait. But the survey goes on to further that as a result of surveying these students, they are really worried about all the problems that come with unions. But even more so, the study also counts student athletes, which means that it's their opinion.
Can I see the study after?
Sure. Can I get a question? Sure. So in response to my case, you say you're gonna lose enrollment, right?
Yeah, that was a logical analysis.
Okay, yeah. So, but then you tell me later on that tuition rates are increasing right now, right?
Well, yeah, that's just how stuff works.
Wait, okay,
Like,
no, wait,
colleges
this is
aren't
really
going
crucial. You tell me that like colleges can't increase spending, like they just won't,
No,
right?
no, no. I'm saying that colleges won't try to pull from tuition because that's really dangerous. The only reason why your tuition is increasing the status quo is just because of there's an increasing trend.
Wait, but if we look at Greenwald, which tells you in the past we've already seen an increase in tuition costs, doesn't that satisfy the fact that that's simply not true?
What does Greenwald say?
Greenwald says that in universities, when they had to have high levels of athletic spending, they increased tuition costs by 55% to 65%.
Alright, I want to see that evidence.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Delaney evidence, right? You say that students want to play and that's the only reason why they're not being exploited and stuff, right?
We tell you that like it's optional to join a sport.
Alright, great. So how do these student athletes go to college? Scholarships, right? Because they're impoverished. The majority of student athletes are impoverished, which means the only reason they can go to college is because of this scholarship.
Okay,
They
so
get
why
to play the sport.
do majority of low-income students drop out without finishing their degree?
You tell me.
Okay,
So
so
how
they
do you
drop
money-
out because they have to support their family.
Right, which means that if you don't pay these students and this is like not a job in the neg world, they will be forced to find a secondary job.
No, when you affirm, you give them enough money to actually cover for their family, meaning that they can actually stay in college and stay all 4 years.
Thank you.
Okay, look, think about it this way. Right now, a scholarship should only be used for the scholarship for room and board, right?
Wait, you literally just said that when you affirm, you give them money so that they can pay for.
Or
the
sorry,
board.
you can't. Wait. Oh, my bad. You don't want it. But anyway, okay. Let's move on. No.
Yeah, I love the last one. So let's talk about the reforms that you talked about, right?
Sure.
I just want to know that these reforms are so good and they're happening in status quo. How many students are being benefited?
Okay, so here's what we would tell you, right? Is that right now we're seeing increases in
No,
the
I just want internal work. I just want to know.
I can't quantify the increase in education. Like what?
Why not?
Increase in classes?
Wait,
Like that's
tell me
obviously
wait,
something
tell me
you can't
increased
quantify.
graduation rates. Tell me how many students are being benefited by this
Well,
reform of health insurance.
Look, what we would contend is that right now, status quo statistics about reform are going to be better. That's why
You
Delaney.
don't have
Yes,
statistics.
we do.
Like,
Delaney
your
tells you.
statistics are better.
Delaney tells you that college athletes right now graduate at a higher rate than non-college athletes.
That's in the status quo without reform. Oh yeah, we're gonna see the 29%.
The judges, it's going to be one piece of defense on the neg, and then one good run down. All three judges ready. That's what I mean. On the negative case, they try to extend this response that historically, because of increases in athletic spending, they've had to cut from tuition. But we will tell you that remember the Business Insider evidence, it only costs $200 million for all these schools, so it's not going to be a drastic increase in tuition, but they never respond to the Schwartzen evidence. What we tell you is they're not going to have to increase athletic spending. The reason why they have high amounts of athletic spending in these status quo because they want to attract new recruits, which means now that they have a better method to do it with direct payment, they just switch to that, they just reallocate funds. There's no reason that there is an increase. But now go to the affirmative case where exploitation is going to be the biggest one in today's round. They say that they choose to play, so it's not exploitation, but even if they do choose to play, this is like indentured servitude, it's still exploitation. But second, and more importantly, realize that some of the only reasons that these students are on the college campus is because they play the sport and because they have the scholarship tied to that. But then specifically on our first point, they try to turn this with the Reuters cited Reuters analysis saying that we change focus, but he literally conceded in Crossfire that it's better to pay them wages because they don't have to go out and get extra jobs and literally drop out of college to support their families. This is a green-headed evidence that we can actually present to you, and the argument is definitely true, which means that we're accessing education way better than they are. But now the most important warrant in today's round is going to be unions. They say that 29% don't support unions, but this is 49% don't support are just normal students, but 60% of student athletes actually want this, which means we still access it. Then they say they bargain for grade requirements. Realize the fact they can only bargain with the athletic department, with their employer. That's how unions work. Realize the fact that they can't change academic policies and specifically grad requirements that affect the entire school. They simply cannot do that. But then they say that low-level sports will be affected. Realize the fact that they can form unions too. They can beat back like these NCAA themselves. They can get like the low level will say that. But then they finally try to turn it by saying that like other like unions like trying to like access money, but realize the fact that the college students are unionizing themselves if they're not subject to this type of like corruption. But here's the most important part. In the status quo, Vice tells you that these reforms are purely cosmetic from the NCAA. This is really important because the WSJ evidence tells you that the only way that you reform big organizations like the NCAA is through unionization. That's the only way that you get compensation for these players.
Okay, first, I see the business inside part, and then I see the part of the players that you can't advocate, you can't like bargain for lower grad requirements at college.
Yeah, I understand.
So it's just talking about how unions and it's a different example.
it'll be our first contention, then unionization. Okay, is everyone ready? Alright. Time starts. Now, let's start with my first contention. They extend a couple responses. First, they're trying to tell you this card that says that you can just reallocate money from from wasteful spending. One, we call for the card. It just says they can simply do it, but it doesn't grant them fiat in the first place. It's not saying that they will. At that point, you prefer history because we tell you if there's a precedent that in the past, whenever there's increased athletic spending, there's been a diversion of resources. This outweighs all their evidence because it tells you specifically in the past when there's increased spending, this diversion of resources happened. But then second of all, they extend a business insider that says it only costs $200 million to pay these athletes. We call for the evidence. It's a federal work study program, not actually the Fair Labor Standards Act, which requires a minimum wage, which the federal work study program does not. That's not topical. At that point, you extend the impacts of our contentions. First, on tuition, we tell you that if you increase the cost, Dorfman tells you by paying student athletes, you increase the cost of tuitions. We tell you a $100 increase in tuitions leads to a 0.25% decrease in enrollment. Then second, on programs, we tell you specifically that in the past, we've increased athletic spending with Title IX specifically. We saw a cut in men's programs, not an expansion of spending. We tell you specifically, if you cut a program, you see a 50% decrease in enrollment. I tell you why that matters more in weight later on. But then, let's go to their case. They go really big for unionization. First, on their first turn of Livingston, they try to tell you that that unions can't or bargain for lower educational requirements. Call for the evidence. I encourage you to call for it. It literally says nothing about that. At that point, you extend Livingston, who tells you specifically that if students start bargaining for students start unionizing, they start bargaining for lower educational requirements. That means in the long term, you're harming the quality of education. That degree that they talk about is so good, it's going to decrease in value because they're literally getting education for no reason. But then second of all, you can extend the fact that if people start collectively bargaining, it's going to increase discrepancies between higher level sports and lower level sports. They try to tell you that these lower level sports can just bargain more, but that's the whole argument. These lower level sports can't bargain at all because they have such a low level non-profitable programs, and these higher level profitable programs have a much more power when it comes to unionization. At that point, you're increasing inequality between these programs. At the end of the day, we're outweighing on scope because not only are we affecting student athletes, we're affecting every single student who goes to college. If we start paying student athletes more, we see diversion of resources. You're increasing the cost to actually go to a college in the first place. This links into all the literature about how graduations is good, and at the end of the day, it's a clear negative ballot. Alright.
I'm sorry.
So you think specifically that the work study program, but it specifically says that if we change their definition to employees, they pay all of them nothing.
It says under the federal work study program, it will cost $22 million to pay every single student.
Sure, that's just like changing the definition to employees.
Federal work study program.
A federal work study program doesn't require a minimum wage like the Fair Labor Standards Act. The federal work study programs, you can give a set amount, like $4,000 a week, right? Whereas the Fair Labor Standards Act, you have to pay minimum wage for every single
Even more so, a federal work study only covers half the amount of hours that an athlete actually works. And second, we can give you specific evidence that it would only be like 1,500 per athlete, whereas in a world with the FLSA recognition, it would be a lot more.
Okay, so what's that?
I can pull it. It's kind of late.
I don't know. I'm just saying that you say that this $100 increase in tuition stops students, but how much does tuition go up?
Right. Okay. So what we tell you is that historically, when
no, I understand the word. I just want to know the
I mean,
quantification. How many more students are excluded?
That's what Greenwald tells you. Is that when you have high athletic spending, and you yourself, we tell you that there's an increase, a lot, in an FLSA recognition, that would lead to a large increase in tuition costs, which prevents, thousands of kids, not just student athletes, from going to college in the first place. All right, we good? Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about impact in today's time, right? So what would be the biggest impact? Allowing kids to graduate in the first place? Poverty? So what's I guess the link into poverty would be going to college, right? Or what? Because unionization arguments talk about making quality of education better. So could we both agree that going to college in the first place, the first step in solving poverty?
No.
Okay.
You graduate from college, right?
Okay,
if
so
you go and don't graduate, then there's no point.
Sure. Okay. I'll do a question.
Yeah. So, if a student can get into college with a low tuition rate, but when he's at college doesn't have the means to pay that through, what's more important?
Wait, hold on. So, first of all, we're telling you that right now, student athletes are graduating at a higher rate, which means that right now the status quo is solved. But second of all, what we would contend is that scholarships are the better tool, and this is kind of late, so I'm just going to tell you that scholarships are better because they're not taxable, and other benefits that make it so it's easier for someone with a scholarship to get through to college rather than a wage. All right.
You understand that, Joe? Do you have a question?
All right. So on unions, right? So what is your best link to the poverty? What is the link to unions into poverty?
bargaining.
Okay, so collective bargaining is your right?
Okay.
So it's going to be 3 pieces of criminal defense, or just defense on the neck, and then 1 outvoter, which is going, actually 2 outvooters. I'll type those. Everyone ready? 3 pieces of defense, they never respond to the first one. Comes from Shotgun, who tells you that they don't have to generate, like schools don't have to generate revenue because they're non-profit. They just have to reallocate funds from excessive spending on facilities. If you want to affirm, then they say that empirically colleges that pull from tuition. That's where we do our second piece of defense from Slate that tells you that athletic spending is marginal in terms of total school budget. Even if they pull tuition, it's not enough to access their impact. This is going to be really important because we both concede that their impact should have already happened in the status quo. The fact that they can never quantify their impact means that this probably doesn't really have much of an impact anyway. The third one's going to be from Bias, who tells you that current reform is purely cosmetic. Littlefield tells you that the only way real reform happens is if you pay players. At that point, you can take all the turns on our case that's contingent under second contention because these reforms that they're talking about don't actually have any real weight in the real, and like in terms of the real, like how the world actually works. Then a quick off-case voter, which he conceded to the second classifier. Greenhaven tells you that if you don't pay students, they're forced to go out and drop out of education. You find a secondary job to pay for their family. Insofar as you can pay students, they're not going to drop out of college. That's going to be a really leading into long-term like graduation and long-term poverty solvency. Let's move on back to K's offense. The only voter that's going to be off here is going to be off unionization. They try to put a lot of responses here. First, they say that only 29% of students support unions. Call for the card. 94% of these are normal students. We tell you that 60% of student athletes want unions. You still get unions in the affirmative role. Then, to respond to the terms, first they say that these unions are going to negotiate academic standards. Remember, that these unions can only bargain with the employer. They don't have any power over academic standards. They only have power over like labor standards. Then they say that low revenue generating sports systems are going to disappear. But we tell you that low-level sports can form unions too. They can also bargain for higher wages. That doesn't happen. Then they talk about the steelworkers union, realize that our anti-manifest if college students unionize, not like steelworkers encouraging them to unionize. It has to be their own idea, which happens in our world. Now at that point we ask the Leroy Court tells you that the threat of college players like unionizing is going to produce reform. At that point we ask this EPI who tells you that unions empirically raise benefits by 28%. At that point, let's do some weighing. We will win our probability because their impacts already should have happened in their world, whereas we can give you a quantifiable impact from the EPI that is a 28% benefit of unions. For these reasons, it's going to be affirming the round.
Okay, we think that.
Okay, so addressing some stuff on con, and then like giving the voter there, then giving the voters on pro, and then doing weighing at the end. Is anyone not ready? Okay. Starting on the con case, the first evidence he keeps bringing up is the Scranton evidence that says it's a non-profit. However, this is simply not true. In fact, if what they were saying was true, then in the past when colleges had needed to increase athletic spending, they would have pulled from like coaches' salaries and infrastructure. But that's not what happened, as Greenwald tells you that when they needed to increase spending, they pulled directly by increasing tuition costs by 65%. But second, he gives you a slate card that says it's a marginal impact. I would contend is that increasing tuition rates by 65% is not marginal and is a very big impact as you're preventing thousands of kids, literally thousands of kids, from attending college in the first place. But then he gives the vice card, we're not going for a second contention, it's non-topical. But then, even more so, the biggest reason why our current voter is very important is our links into poverty. What we tell you is that as a result of increasing graduation rates by A, making it so they can stay in college for all 4 years, and B, keeping programs alive and not getting rid of them in their world, that's going to lead to a lot less poverty. As you can extend Philip that tells you that by getting a graduate degree, you are 3.5 times less likely to live in poverty. That's the cleanest way where you can access a decrease in poverty. But even more so, going to the pro case, on unions, we give you the Livingston term that tells you that collective bargaining would bargain away worse educational standards. Their only response to this is that they can't do this. Call for the evidence. Nowhere does it actually kind of say that kind of thing that they're trying to make it seem. That's really crucial, as Livingston is going to be a very big voter, as their link, as they conceded crossfire, is that collective bargaining increases education quality. But that's not true. What happens is when you have collective bargaining, they bargain away educational standards like minimum GPAs and minimum graduation rates. At that point, realize that the quality of education exploitation is going to be very bad in their world and not in our world. But then second is the USA Today card, which tells you very clearly that if you have collective bargaining, you're going to bargain away the lower level programs. That's really crucial because even if we accept that there are some harms on programs right now, it's always preferable to have a world with programs than a world with zero programs at all. This goes unresponsive to them in final crocus. It's a very big voter. We're going to outweigh 8 on time frame because realize that having a better educational quality is going to affect them in the long run in their whole life, not just in 4 years in college, and B on scope. We're impacting down to every single student, not just student athletes. When we see a giant increase in tuition, at that point we can only see a combat.
Can I see your Huffington Post evidence about 65%, and then your contention about unions, and then your Livingston term? Yeah, just a contention.